Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, another hot day in Johnson County. So today I have Bailey Mullins here. I needed somebody to spar with a little bit about
Hello,
courtesy.
everybody.
He's going to school me again. I've asked him to take it easy on me because I'm getting old and slow, but that's okay. And we're going to talk about Iran. We're going to talk about the Democrat Socialists. Speaking of Democrat Socialists, how you doing, Josh?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
So Comrade Josh is on the board, so we're good to go. You just looking like old man. Anyway,
I'm just glad you got someone else to pick on.
Yeah, poor baby. Here's a tissue. Anyway, so we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about Medicare for all. We're gonna talk about some interesting stuff going on in politics, particularly again with the Democrat Socialists. Today is a big day in Michigan, and we'll talk about that. And I don't know, why the Rangers stink. We can talk about that too. Are you a baseball fan?
I don't watch as much as I used to.
Well, it's almost impossible. I've been ranting about this on the show for quite some time, is because of all the streaming services. You're not getting the baseball that you had 5 years ago.
Right.
If you don't want to pay it, and who wants to pay to see the slop they saw last night? Mm-hmm. I have an old student of mine, and Jennifer Moss is her married name, and she's an ardent Ranger fan, and God bless her. I can only imagine what she's going through right now. Anyway, let's talk about the sponsors, and then I'll get to my beat down. Anyway, our place, great place as always. When we go have breakfast there every other Monday, we talk about these things, and I end up the liberal on the table. So to tell you something. But we also, by the way, speaking of which, our last conversation was about Paxton Talrico. I want to talk about that too. Okay. I forgot that. But anyway, our place restaurant, it's always a great place to have these kind of conversations because nobody bugs you, and it's all good. Same thing with Gina's Pizza. I think tonight is bingo night. Tomorrow night is karaoke night. Are you a singer?
I love to sing, especially in the shower.
There you go. So professionally?
Get a good echo, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's what karaoke's for, to go out there and shine and show your talent. But also they have the live music on Sunday nights, which is always a big thing. Susie Morgan's there once a month, and, she kind of ramrods all of that, for Otto. So it's a pretty good deal. And no, she will not play Skinnerd for you. That's her motto. I think that's her hashtag. Also, our friends Old Pro Roofing, John Williams, 817-734-2756. Get that roof inspected. Right now is a good time to do it. We're not going to get any rain anytime soon, so he's got the ability to do it, and it takes about 10 minutes, and you get a written report. It isn't just an eyeball look and say, you're good. No, they get a report, and what it helps you with is that if we do have a bad weather event, say in the fall, you have the documentation to show that it wasn't old damage, it's new damage, and therefore the insurance company is a bit more cooperative. So that always helps. Also, my friend Jeff Kelly over at the Wethington Agencies, 817-781-0546. If you're looking to move in and around the area, this is the man to talk to. He knows real estate. I've been in his office, and he has all this documentation and data and all this other stuff. Certainly, it's already Gary Mullins is watching. Yes. That would be your father, no doubt.
That would.
How's he doing these days?
He's doing good. He's doing good. Getting a little better day by day.
That's good.
Yes, sir.
Going through it is a beating, as I've told my vast listening audience with my father and then my mother and all this. But it is what it is. God's hands on him, so I'm not, or her
right.
rather. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. At least I can't. I'm trying to get all this saved here, and I'm doing it without my glasses. I left them at home because I'm really not that smart today. And so I don't know who I'm sharing this with. I'm kind of doing it by memory. It's my old high school website just got shared with. I don't know how many people watch that, but there you go. We'll find out, won't we? There you go. There's that one, and there's that one. Okay, back to Jeff since he's paying for all of this. 817-781-0546. So if you're looking to move in this area, you need to talk to him because he's really not knowledgeable about it, and he's very, very dedicated to it. We have the B&I meetings. He comes in with all this data. He also does a very good job marketing, not just because he advertises here, but he'll have brochures printed of your house and that they're trying to move, and it's very, very nice. Also, my friend Rod Lewis, we're at Burleson News Express. Yesterday, I was telling the ladies at the chamber, they were impressed with him. I'm impressed with him. because, it's local news. Yesterday's article was about school starting again. Aren't you glad you don't have to mess with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
But this time, when you were younger, it was, football fall practice, right? And all that, and that lovely weather. And you didn't have that indoor facility, did you?
No, they definitely got all the good stuff after.
That's what drives me crazy about what's going on in Texas high schools when it comes to sports. An indoor practice facility. You know what happened in my day when it rained? You got wet.
You got all muddy and wet. Yeah.
You got hot and you got cold, and and now it's like, no, darling, here. Okay, Burleson News Express. Also, they have a recipe in the back that my wife's going to do. Okay, now you can go on to True Climate. All right, True Climate Heating and Cooling, 682-244-2019. Will Cobb and his sister Emily Cobb will take care of you. You need to get your air conditioner inspected. Right now, they're cranking out, and if you go out today, you got a real problem. Now I don't know how quickly it can get to you, but I do know that when somebody called me about, it'd be about 2.5 weeks ago, they came out that afternoon. When somebody called me and said, I need your phone number. And I said, well, it's on the website. It's on the podcast. And go, you really think I want to watch a whole podcast just for that? Give me the phone number, dadgummit. So I gave them the phone number, and they were out in about 3 hours.
That's a pretty good turnaround.
Yeah, it is. They're pretty conscientious about that. And as far as any nonprofits, we'll talk about at the end. I know that Wings of Hope has something going on. So pick the topic. What would you like to talk about first?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty with everything going on in Iran. Kind of want to get your spill on it.
Well, here's the thing about it. When it first started 6 months ago, I was of mixed opinion. But, I didn't want to come on the air and rant about constitutional procedures because that'd fall flat. I do think that the way this war was entered into was haphazard. I do believe that there should have been a whole lot more consultation with Congress. And now I get that Congress probably would oppose anything that Trump would say, but there's still, you read the Constitution, it doesn't say unless the Congress doesn't agree with you. That's the whole purpose.
Right.
What a lot of people don't understand about our Constitution is conflict and that kind of thing is not a bug, but a feature of the system.
Right.
The founding fathers put that there intentionally. But, I also knew, on the other hand, that Iran has been a very vocal enemy of the United States. It has been since the revolution in 79. And they made no bones about it. This isn't an implied threat. This is what they say. They end all their Friday prayers with death to America, right?
Absolutely.
So it's not like we have to read between the lines. I also was very concerned that Mr. Trump got into this war thinking it'll be over in about 2 weeks. I don't know how it could come to that conclusion. His own and what bothers me about the cabinet, I've read about the internal debates about it, and the only one that was really strongly advocating for it was Hegseth. The rest were like, well, what do you say, Mr. President? Well, we need better advice given to the president than that. Now, would he have done it anyway? Probably. But, they were trying to tell him all these reasons why it's not going to be a 2-week thing. Hegseth is the only one who said, well, it'll be over by tomorrow afternoon or something dumb like that.
Right.
So we went into it very poorly. And I think we vastly, well, not we, but Mr. Trump vastly underestimated the resolve of the Iranian leadership. He thinks that he can negotiate them like Johnson did with the North Vietnamese. He thought all he needed to do is get Ho Chi Minh in the room and they come up with a deal. And Johnson never realized just who he's dealing with in Ho Chi Minh and the North Vietnamese. I mean, there was no price they weren't willing to pay. And I think the same thing happens here with Trump and the leadership of Iran. They don't care about what's going on with their people. They don't care how much pain their people are going through. There's no negotiation. And so when Trump repeatedly as it goes over, well, we're about to negotiate. It's imminent. It's, all we need to do is sign it. It's all right there, blah, blah, blah. And then boom, the next day we read about ships being bombed. And, I think we're getting jerked back and forth pretty hard.
I think so too. I think one of the main strategies whenever it comes to Iran is flooding the internet with too much information. And, that's something, we see that with, the AI images of them, taking down a B-2 bomber, and, the B-2 bomber they posted is the size of, 4 station wagons and 4 or 5 station wagons lengthwise. And if you know anything about B-2 bombers, they're
massive. Yeah.
But I think, there's a lot of uncertainty whenever it comes to Iran. Do I think things should have been done differently? Do I think things should have been done more diligently? Of course. I think a lot more planning should have gone into it. I think in general aspect there was a little bit of planning. We look at what we did in the southern hemisphere with what was it? With Maduro, Venezuela, we captured Maduro, took control of the oil. I think that was planned beforehand, because, that's, Venezuela's where a lot of that region gets a lot of their oil. Venezuela being, the largest, what was it? The largest oil reserves or something like that in the world. So I think this was planned for a while. And they definitely knew, especially even before going into Venezuela, that this was going to happen, because, if we cut off the Strait of Hormuz, or if we didn't cut off the Strait of Hormuz, then, they would have just got their oil from Venezuela.
Well, we don't get a lot of oil from that area region as much as we used to.
I think it's like, what, 2 to 5%? Maybe?
Yeah. The Europeans and the Japanese are the ones that are getting hurt the most,
right?
And the Chinese supposedly. But here's another thing that we need to understand: the Iranian people aren't the enemy, certainly, and they're the ones that are getting basically just hammered by all this. And the Iranian leadership is okay with that. We tend to think a lot differently than they do, or the West thinks a lot differently than they do. They think that, the people will endure as much pain as we care to. And we think here, we're all upset about gas prices. We're upset about all the prices. And I am. I mean, I drove today and the gas prices went up 40 cents since last night. And I'm like, this is wrong. We're getting gouged here. But the point is that Trump, regardless of what he thinks the rest of the politicians in office have to react to the pain supposedly we're feeling. The Iranian people, their pain is irrelevant. Same thing with the Chinese. Their pain is irrelevant. Same thing with the North Vietnamese. It didn't matter if they were on board or not.
Right.
It didn't matter if they were unhappy or not. It's just, that's where I get really irritated, is that we seem to think if we do these things, then, that the Iranian people will rise up and overthrow their government.
And I think that was the hope.
What would they do it with?
Right. And I think we saw, the effects of that, the 30,000 Iranian citizens that were gunned down and murdered because they were protesting Iran, cutting off the internet access so people couldn't reach out, post what was going on.
It was a whole sorts of things. It was a spontaneous thing in their markets. They do a lot of business face-to-face markets,
right?
And when the prices and everything were going up to the point, and their rial, their currency was worthless, they protested, and like you said, they got gunned down,
right?
And what can they do about it? I mean, and that happened in 2009,
right?
It's happened several times. Every time there's an uprising, there was one about 2 years ago where a woman was killed for not wearing the head covering, right? And they had a protest. Few hundred people were killed, and to them, the Iranian government, that's just the cost of doing business. They don't consider that. And people say, well, Trump said the Iranian people should have rose up with what? Broom handles and sticks. They don't have any weaponry.
Right. There's
no Second Amendment in Iran. So I just think the whole thing was so poorly planned, and I really do think that Trump. This will get me in trouble with some of my colleagues, but I think Trump is delusional on this and other things, but I think he views things in his reality, and that is the way it is, regardless of evidence on the ground.
Right.
And it scares me a little bit. I think I don't think he's doing this just for effect. I think he really believes it. I mean, you probably saw what's going on with that stupid reflecting pool. Mm-hmm. Everybody and their dog, including his own people, said it's just a bad job that was done and needs to be redone. And he's convinced it's vandalism, and there's no talking him out of it.
Right.
And so that concerns me that we have him operating in that realm of reality, shall we say.
Right. And, I think, Trump, I don't think he plans things out as much as he should. Like you said, what are these people going to rise up with? Mm-hmm. I think the big picture that is more so being looked at is, closing the Strait of Hormuz. Yes, it's hurting Iran, but it's also hurting, our other adversaries, China, things like that. China's running out of oil. So I think in the big picture, it's more so looking like who can endure the longest and who's it going to hurt the longest. Yes, our gas prices are high, but I hate to bring up Biden whenever we're talking about Trump, but I remember when I was in college paying $5.21 per gallon, for gasoline, and there were no wars, but there were increased regulations. There were.
Well, you drive gas or diesel?
I drive gas.
All right.
Yes, sir. But I think the reasoning is different. Our gas is going up, because we are in, a conflict internationally, but, gas prices, that they were higher under Biden. And that was because of decisions that the administration made, increasing regulations, things like that, closing pipelines, things like that were actively hurting us, and, our trade with oil, they canceled leases with oil industries and everything like that. And it kind of blows my mind that, we could be in this, big conflict with Iran and things like that, and gas still be cheaper than it was under Biden with all, it just kind of makes you think, how bad these regulations were for business.
The other thing that bothers me about the war is that every war planning scenario the Pentagon ever worked out with Iran included the closing of the strait. Mm-hmm. And his military advisors told him that this is going to happen. No, it's not. It won't happen because we'll defeat them so quickly and they won't do it. They won't dare do it. And of course, they've done it.
Right.
And what they've really done is also, I'm sure Iran was aware of this anyway, but now they realize they have a very potent weapon in their hands closing down that strait. But it angers me that every military expert said this is how Iran will react in these certain type of scenarios. And one of the constants throughout all of those scenarios was the closing of that strait.
Right.
And he just would not acknowledge that they won't do it. They won't have time to do it. They don't have the muscle to do it. And then here comes all these, $20,000 drones, and we're spending like $2 million missiles to knock them down.
Right.
And we were totally caught flat-footed about drone warfare. Mm-hmm. We're going to the Ukrainians now to get advice on how to build drones because they apparently have really found a way to just make them cheap and deadly. And, but how could we not have foreseen that?
Right.
So I just think we got into this. A lot of people blame Netanyahu and Israel. Is that your view of it?
I know that there was a lot of intel shared by Israel, a lot of intel, shared by Netanyahu. I don't think that Netanyahu has Trump by the thumb or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Does it benefit the both of us? Sure. I know Iran is a global sponsor of terrorism, so taking on Iran it doesn't just benefit the Jewish state. It doesn't just benefit the United States. Even in America's founding, the first war that the United States ever fought was, the Barbary War. Before we even had our declaration, before we even
no. It was during the Jefferson administration.
Well, yes,
right.
during the Jefferson administration, right. And Jefferson actually went and delegated with these with these people, and he asked why. why would you, wage, this kind of terror on, a country who has, no military presence in the area? We've never done anything wrong. And, they stated because the Quran gives us the authority to do so because, you are infidels and non-believers.
Well, okay, I know you want to talk about that, but let's be very careful for that. We don't want to paint too broadly here.
Right.
That by definition, a Muslim is incapable of being a good American and that kind of thing.
No, not at all.
Okay, because I've had Muslim students and they're no more radicalized than anybody else. So just,
right, of course.
But we are talking about an extreme fringe of Islam.
I am.
Yeah, and you had some quotes about how Iran operates. I mean, you'd say, well, doesn't the Saudis, don't the Egyptians, don't the Jordanians use the Quran as well?
Right.
Not like the Iranians do.
Of course.
They use it in a much more extreme way.
Yes.
So, if you want to read one or two, that's fine.
Yeah. In the Quran 2:191, it says, "Slay the unbelievers where you find them." And a lot of the members of the IRGC, they're stating these things that their extreme beliefs, they're getting them from the Quran and the things like that. Quran 9:5, when the opportunity arises, kill the infidels wherever you find them, things like that. These are just the extremism, the extreme parts of Islam that they're taking advantage of, and I think it definitely it brings a bad light to Islam, because I do know good Islamists and things like that, and unfortunately it, especially with the news, you hear about all this stuff going on, and it gives a bad viewpoint to the broad of Islam.
Well, and the same thing is Christians being tagged with some of the Old Testament verses about stoning your daughter for wearing fabric of two different cloths or whatever else, that kind of thing. You may have some isolated sects that still go by the old Deuteronomy laws and whatever else, but the unfortunate thing, what you're quoting, is that these people happen to run a government that's attempting to export terrorism and create a nuclear state for itself. And so, because no other Islamic-based government follows that extreme version. And I know for a fact that when 9/11 happened, I was a teacher then, and I had a couple of Muslim students, how mortified they were and afraid that they were.
I bet.
Because they thought that the backlash would just come across all of Muslims.
Right.
And I think George W. Bush did a really, really good job right at the very beginning. He said, this is not what we're after. It's these fanatics, not just your everyday Muslim American or whatever.
Right.
And so I think he did a great job in trying to head that off at the pass. You can't account for everybody's reaction, but as a government, I think we did a good job then of differentiating between these fanatics and everybody else.
Right.
And that's what I think Trump doesn't understand. He's dealing with fanatics.
Right.
He's not the Iranian people themselves. I mean, I'm sure the IRGC has their supporters, but I have to believe the rank and file Iranian is not a fanatic.
Right.
But they're just caught in a system. The thing is, a lot of people don't understand about the Iranian Revolution. The original overturning of the Shah was not done by Muslim terrorists, or what do you want to call them, Muslim extremists.
Right.
It was done by basically leftists and socialists. And then 6 months later,
they turned on them.
The Islamists turned on that government, and that's where you got Ayatollah Khomeini and all that. And this is my senior year of high school, all right? And they turned on America because of our Western culture, and also we took in the Shah when he had cancer treatment, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just saying that the original, it's kind of similar to like what the Russians did. The original revolution was socialist, and then the communists took over 6 months later and killed all the socialists. So, that kind of thing. It's a history lesson. But
I think that sheds a little light to the dangers of transitioning to things like that. I can't remember where the quote was or who it came from, but I remember a quote that was like, the start of communism begins at socialism.
Well, yes, but it doesn't necessarily directly lead to it in all cases, because we've had socialist governments in Europe for a while, and they didn't turn out communist.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, it is. It's a necessary step, so to speak. But it isn't. It is not the ultimate fate of a socialist nation to go communist. Now,
Right.
that being said, is that you're not going to go from capitalism to communism. Okay, you're going to go, if there is a, you're going to go from, I don't know. You look at Russia or whatever; they're hardly capitalist, but you go from capitalist to socialist to communist. It doesn't necessarily follow that once you go to a socialist state, you're going to be a communist state. However, that being said, I am not in favor of a socialist state, not just because of the possible end results, but I don't like it for itself.
Right.
Rhonda Schaefer Mullins, whom I bet you know, there's a big difference between a Muslim and a radical Islamist. Miss Rhonda would be whom?
Miss Rhonda is my stepmom.
Stepmom, okay.
Yes.
Good for you, Miss Rhonda. You got a very wise stepson here. But anyway, the point is that we can kind of segue now into the Democrat Socialists of America. My problem with them, and not just their issues, but many of them will claim the mantle of communism. It's in their manifesto. Now, some of the candidates say, well, I'm not really a communist, I'm a Democrat socialist. Or you got somebody like the gentleman in Michigan, Abdul El Said, saying, I'm not even a Democrat socialist, but he has all their views, so what's the difference, right?
I think it's using that as a front to what's the term? The something justifies the means, or
ends justify the means. So they're going to, this El Said said, I'm not a Democrat socialist, I'm a Democrat.
But if you run as a communist, you're probably not going to get it. But if you run as a socialist, you got a little bit of a better chance, and then you transition.
It kind of reminds me of the old Jeff Foxworthy routine. You may be a redneck if, and that's kind of like, well,
here's your time.
Yeah, you may be a socialist if, and whatever. And I look at some of these people that the Democrats have to contend with, and it reminds me of what we had to contend with in the Republican Party to some degree with the Tea Party, but I am not going to put the Tea Party and the Democrat Socialists in the same category, because I do believe that the Tea Party stood for a dramatically different version of America than the Democrat Socialists do.
Right.
They were both unhappy with their respective parties, but I don't think the Tea Party was looking to burn it down like the Democrat Socialists are.
Right.
Now,
one thing that I don't understand, we see, Zoran Mamdani, trying to open these government-ran convenience stores or grocery stores and things like that. And from what I understand, the only thing that they're offering is bread and milk and things like that.
Staples mostly. Yeah.
Right. I don't know. From what I understand, this was supposed to be done last year, and now it's not going to be done until 29.
Well, no, they're going to open up a couple of trial runs.
Okay.
And what they asked him, how are you going to limit this to Manhattanites or New York City residents, because they're the ones tax supporting it, right? How are you going to keep people from Jersey, Connecticut crossing into Manhattan? Because his grocery is going to be about a third less.
And then he said IDs, right?
No, he said we're not going to use IDs because that's racist. All right, and he also doesn't want to give a opening for IDs and voting and right now. But what's going to happen is basically the taxpayers in New York are not just going to be subsidizing the groceries of Brooklynites, but also people crossing the river from New Jersey. And it's going to fail spectacularly. It's almost, they asked for it. And I want to kind of reiterate, circle back to a point about the Tea Party. I hope no one misunderstands. I view the Tea Party in the same categories as the Democrat Socialists. I'm just talking about their political impact. I do believe that most of the people I knew in the Tea Party consider themselves Republicans trying to reform the party. The Democrat Socialists aren't like that.
Right.
All right. They're using the Democrat Party as an entry into the system, but they don't have any interest in being Democrats. For the life of me, I don't know why they allow Bernie Sanders to do what he does under their name. But that's their problem.
Right.
Bernie Sanders has no intention of being a Democrat, but he runs in their primaries. He votes with them all the time. He's a Democrat in everything but name, but I think he is a destructive element within the Democrat Party.
I think because he's a good virtue signaler. He, brings about some things that they like, and, he's popular amongst, the people that he represents and others. And what I don't think they understand is, they may be shooting themselves in the foot. They're, allowing the Zoran Mondanis, they're allowing the Bernie Sanders. But at the end of the day, if that's what takes over the party, then, the moderate Democrat is out the door.
Well, they're pretty much out the door. And to be fair, the moderate Republican is having a hard time. I feel like a political orphan because I get not as much as I used to on the air, but some, and some from my buddies a little bit, that I'm, a rhino, all right? Because, but I feel like the Republican Party in some ways has moved off of what I consider to be traditional Republican stances on things, particularly in issues of trade and world events and things like that. But that being said, it's very difficult for a lot of us who have been Republicans all our lives to continue to support not just some of the ideas, but some of the people that the Republican Party is putting out there. And we can segue now into the Tallarico-Paxton race. What are your thoughts on that?
I disagree with a lot of what Tallarico talks about. He talks about how, what did he say? Something about he's not some kind of Christian.
I don't know if I recall what you're trying to recall here myself.
Yeah, I'd have to.
I know that he said some things that have angered a lot of traditional Christians, if you will. But is it just that, or is his policies that bother you, or both?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
With wanting to take away guns, of course. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a First Amendment kind of guy, or Second Amendment. Yeah,
right,
I'm sorry, Second Amendment kind of guy, and I just there's one way. I know we're talking about socialism and communism and things like that. The first thing to make sure that those things can bloom is you take away the people's right to stand up to that kind of thing.
Well, we kind of segues back to what we talked about at Tehran. There's no way they can stand up to the IRGC because they have no means to do so.
Right.
If we had a similar situation here, good luck taking over Johnson County.
No. Yeah.
And, it'd be impossible. What about Mr. Paxton? Because obviously there's some issues involved with Mr. Paxton.
I agree with Paxton on most things. What are the issues that you see with Paxton?
Well, it's mostly professional and personal, and as far as political, there's a couple of them that are political. My problem with Mr. Paxton is not just he had an affair with a woman, maybe more than one.
Right.
Okay, that I don't like that at all. I mean, as a but I'm not going to sit in judgment on him morally, okay?
Right.
Because the idea that up in Washington or in Austin, we have down there are church deacons. We know that goes on, but
Right.
I don't like it. Would that cause me in and of itself not to vote for him? No, but it'd give me a little pause. But professionally, also, he's the way he's handled his job, the fact he was impeached by a Republican-dominated legislature,
Right.
that since he's become Attorney General, his wealth has gone up to $9 million, $10 million, and it's not illegal. That's the sad thing about it. But he used his position to profit for himself.
Right.
That he uses his position as Attorney General to use the powers of the Attorney General against his political opponents or people he doesn't agree with. He's got like 27 districts he's suing for because he doesn't think they prominently displayed the Ten Commandments enough and that kind of thing.
Right.
That's a real problem for me. And the thing is, I went to college with him. I didn't know it until a couple of years ago.
Did you?
He graduated a year after I did from beautiful Baylor. I didn't know him.
Wow.
I had no idea. Not that, it's a big enough school.
Right.
But I just didn't know that until about 2 years ago. So people think, well, you're a Baylor guy. Aren't you going to vote for him? I'm having a hard time pulling that trigger. But I have an even harder time for Mr. Tallarico.
I think the big picture on a lot of these issues for me is, what is the alternative? I may not agree with everything that is happening with Trump. I may not agree with everything that's happening with Paxton. but I do know what the alternative is. And, you know, a lot of people ask me, you know, do I regret my vote for Trump? And, you know, my answer is no, because I do know, you know, what the alternative was.
Harris.
All
right. Oh, yeah. You know, in that I get that a lot. I get that. Well, then what would you choose then? And that's where I come back. It's very difficult because, you know, about 6 months ago, I thought, okay, I'll give Talrico a look because I don't want to be one of these guys that see a D after a name and just automatically shut down.
Right.
Even though, you know, I don't vote Democrat that often. I have, but not very often. But there's some, it's not just his political views. What really bothers me, I think, is that how he's presenting himself. First of all, those commercials I see of Mr. Talrico driving around a pickup, eating barbecue and hanging around good old boys. That's not him at all.
Not at all.
You know, he ran 2 years ago as a state rep as a vegan.
What was it? Whenever Kamala Harris tried to do the country people, you know, that was a little cringy.
Well, it makes me mad that he's portraying himself as just a good old boy, and he also talking about how he signed all these bipartisan bills. Well, you know, here's the problem. How many bills do you think passed in the last legislative session? About 3,400.
Yeah.
Okay, most of them are minor bills. So most of them are approved by acclamation. So he can claim they were bipartisan. But this idea that he brought the people together to pass property taxes is not true. He has never been a proponent of cutting property taxes, and it wasn't him that did it. And so I get angry that he's portraying himself. Second thing is his use of the Bible. If it was done by Republicans, there'd be a lot of criticism about it, by bringing Scripture into a political campaign. Well, Sunday he gets up in a church service and talks about how Jesus is in favor of Medicare for all. First of all, church is not the place for that kind of thing. Second of all, we have no idea what Jesus would have thought about a government policy, Medicare for all. And so to claim that you have, you know, holy sanction on your political positions is exactly what Democrats have been accusing Republicans of doing for years, particularly on the issue of gay rights or abortion. Talrico's doing the same thing. He said, if you oppose Medicare for all, you're not only, you know, hard-hearted, but you're not Christian.
Right.
You know, same thing with any other position. He says abortion is something that God sanctions because of his interpretation of Scripture. Well, if I come up and say, well, my interpretation of Scripture says abortion's wrong, well, you shouldn't be imposing your religious views on other people. That's what makes me mad about Talrico. That's why I'm not voting for him.
It's pretty hypocritical.
I honestly, I gave Talrico an opportunity to look at to read his thoughts and whatever, and see what he had to say and whatever else. I'm not voting for him. As far as Mr. Paxton, jury's still out. Yep. That's where I stand right now. You know, people say, well, not voting for Paxton is just giving a vote for Talrico. Well, maybe Republicans give me something to choose other than the least of two evils.
Right.
Give me something good to vote for. So that's kind of where I stand on it. But I resent Mr. Talrico, frankly, for using Scripture, particularly in a church service, to basically, it's not that he's on God's side, God's on his side. And that's just wrong. And that's the same kind of religious fanaticism.
It gives me a very holier than thou kind of.
Well, again, I can't, the list is long of all the criticisms that Republicans and candidates have gotten over the years for incorporating Scripture into their political views.
Right.
Whether sincerely or cynically. Both have been done.
Right.
But when Talrico does it, what a man of God he is. That's just rubbish. You know, if it's bad for Republicans to do it, it's bad for Democrats to do it.
Right.
So I thank you for letting me vent my spleen, because I've been see these commercials. And honestly, I haven't seen a single Republican commercial yet. Have you?
I don't think that I have.
I haven't seen one, either pro-Paxton or anti-Talrico or even on just a broader sense. I'm just wondering why they have the money. I wonder what they're waiting on.
I don't know. I think the Republican Party definitely understands that the DNC, you know, the Democrats they're in a hole at the moment. I think they understand, you know, the DNC just put up their headquarters for collateral on a loan, so they know that they're in a hole. And I don't know. I think they're waiting for them to shoot themselves in the foot, or you know.
Well, not to get too deep in the weeds, but about a month ago, the Supreme Court ruled that the parties could be more directly involved in financing individual campaigns. it used to be there had to be like a degree of separation. Now, whether they acknowledge that or not is another thing. But now, the Republican Party, which has 4 times the money of the Democrats, are going to be able to directly finance Paxton or anybody else.
Yeah.
Now, Talrico has about 10 times the money on a personal level than Paxton does. Paxton doesn't seem to be hustling too hard for the money. I'm just keep thinking, do they know something I don't?
I think that's one thing that hurts a lot of Republicans is they assume the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
They think, just because, Texas is, always been Republican, that somebody can't sneak up on you. We see that a lot in, voting patterns.
Mm-hmm.
We last couple of elections, we saw the dangers of, Republicans not showing up because they assume the outcome.
Well, I think what's going to happen at the end, it's going to be like O'Rourke and Cruz. But it's 2018. It's getting 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And all the polls showed O'Rourke narrowly ahead until really the day of election. It was a toss-up. Mm-hmm. And Cruz ends up winning by 2.5 points. Because what'll happen and I guarantee this will happen on election day, the urban areas will report first. And Talrico's going to clean up big time in Austin and Houston and Dallas.
Right.
And you'll have some of the die-in-the-wool Democrats out in East Texas. And so probably about halfway through the night, Talrico will be ahead. And then here comes Lubbock, here comes Abilene, here comes the West Texas and the oil patches and all this other stuff. And I think at the end of the day, Paxton's going to win, but it'll be very, very narrow. Mm. Second of all, Abbott's going to win his race.
Right.
Without a lot of trouble. Even though the polls show it's tight, he's going to win by 7 or 8 points. I can't see people voting for Abbott and also for Talrico.
Right.
And so it's just unfortunate. I don't expect my politicians to be church deacons, but I don't want them to be profiting by their position. I don't want them to be, having multiple affairs. I just like them to be normal people.
Right.
Flaws and all. People say, you're not voting for a deacon, so, I don't want somebody who fights and all this other stuff. Mm. Well, you can have people that fight without all this other baggage.
Right.
So.
Yeah, thing that I'll say to that is God can use a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
God can use, a prostitute. God can use a murderer to spread his word. He can use anybody. And, I've had that conversation with family, whenever I started getting more so into my faith and,
Mm-hmm.
Sharing scriptures of the things that I believed in, I got a little bit of kickback. Well, you do this, you do that. And, my comeback was, if God can use a prostitute, if God can
You talk about like Rahab? You talk about Rahab in the book of Joshua, right? She was the one that signaled to Joshua and Caleb that it was safe to come into the city, and she helped them escape and all this. And she was a prostitute. And you can talk about, Lord knows, everybody likes to use David as an example. I get a little bit leery about that because David's described as a man after God's own heart. But David was flawed. And so, I know what you're saying. God could use anybody he wants. And all that. But sometimes I wonder just how involved God gets in our elections because, God gave us free will as well. And the idea that God ordains the outcome of the Paxton-Talrico race, that's for theological minds higher than mine.
Right.
I don't, because we do have agency in what we do. And God doesn't make us robots. Well, your dad says you can take him deer hunting. I guess take Talrico. And if I see Talrico and Camo, I'm going to throw up. All right. That would really make me puke if I saw him toting around a Mossberg and, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that would.
Some muzzy oak.
Yeah. No, I don't want to get into theology because I really don't know. And the older I get, the less sure I am about certain theological positions I had when I was 35 or 30 when I knew everything. So there you are. Any other topic? We got a few minutes left. You want to talk about immigration briefly?
Sure. Yeah. What's your?
Well, you saw what happened in Spain, right?
Yep.
And what triggered that was a Supreme Court ruling that if our Supreme Court had ruled the same way, and there was a case very similar to it about 3 months ago, then we'd probably have the same problem. Now, I did not really know that Spain still had national sovereignty over two little bitty pieces of Morocco, that those two little city-states there, if you want to call them. I mean, the Ceuta is probably about a third of the size of Johnson County. And when the Supreme Court in Spain last week said that if they come to Spain by overcoming natural barriers, then you couldn't just send them home arbitrarily. If they came through man-made barriers, you could. But if you come through natural barriers, like they swam to Spain, and that's why they had.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either. And that's what triggered this whole thing. They had 60,000 of them, and what they were doing is they were swimming around the fencing from Morocco into Ceuta, and they were all washing up on the shore.
Wow.
So they weren't bum rushing the gate in all cases. That was happening too. But a lot of them are coming by, quote, natural means, and so over natural barriers.
Kind of dangerous too. It kind of makes me question, how many people, weren't so lucky during the.
They said about 60 people drowned.
Wow. Yeah.
And most of them, they say, have been sent back home. But I think that whole thing, I will give Trump credit for closing down the border. I am not anti-immigrant by any means. I think we need to have orderly, legal immigration. It's been a benefit to our country historically. But what happened under Biden it's not sustainable for any nation, not just ours.
Biden, whenever Texas put up the razor wire, Biden sit down forklifts to raise the razor wire so the illegals can flood in. I despise that. I mean,
it bothers me on multiple levels. One is that most of the people that were doing this in the Biden administration were trying to escape their situations back in Central America primarily, but we're getting them from all over the world, all right? And I understand that, all right? I understand trying to find a better life, but the point is we can't, on this side of the border, we can't just say, come on in. Like, a lot of the Democrat socialists are actively campaigning on open borders. That's just nuts.
Yeah, I think,
and that can't happen.
Yeah, I think the one thing that separates us from the third world is our borders. And
the fact, that there were people that were entering in this country that were threats to us. They were criminal elements. And I am afraid that probably there's some maybe pro-Hamas, pro-Iranian sleeper cells in this country that got in the border. And it wasn't just Mexico. It was the same thing that's happened in Canada. We get a lot of illegal immigrants from Canada, and some of them are doing it because of the healthcare system there, which we don't have the time. Maybe the next time we can talk about that. But as far as the immigrants they're risking life and limb to come here, I do have compassion for, but we can't just open the gates. And we have no idea how many we have in this country right now. That's another thing that bothers me. We don't really know how many here are here illegally. People are always talking about they're going to be able to vote, and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. That's why I think we need some pretty strict voter ID. And it astounds me that some states don't have photo ID. It really does. I mean, I could think of 15 things sitting here right here that I need a photo ID for. And if I lived in New York, voting would not be one of them. But I need a photo ID to check out a book.
Or fly a plane.
Or get spray paint at Lowe's, or Sudafed at CVS, or, go, if I were young enough, go see certain type of movies and stuff like that. And so it just astounds me that all these things need a photo ID except for one of the most important functions a country has, and that's the elections.
Yeah, it kind of, I kind of throw it around all the time, but, I just wonder if it'll work, next time I go to the liquor store. If I tell them, if you ask for my ID, that's racist.
Well, they don't ask for mine. They don't ask for mine anymore. Apparently, they just take it for granted I'm over 21. I'm sure Josh here still gets carded, I bet. Do you?
All the time.
All the time.
It's not even funny anymore.
It is. It's like, hey, you're 28, right?
29. I'm turning 30 in a month.
And he's available, girls. All right. All right. Well, anyway, 30 in a month. Really, what's your birthday?
September 15th.
My wife's the 21st.
Which is 2 days before North Texas Giving Day.
Yeah, well, we'll all sing you happy birthday on that day.
If I don't get a birthday pizza at Gina's, I'm going to be upset.
Well, I'll tell Lotto.
Sweet.
All right. What he's referring to, I guess we can jump into the nonprofits now. What he's referring to is on September 17th, we're having a mass meeting of all the nonprofits at Gina's Pizza.
Okay.
It's North Texas Giving Day. This will be the 5th time we've done it. It started kind of spontaneously. One of the nonprofit sponsors, Lisa Boltinghouse, over at that Center for ASD, said, "You want to have us all over at one time on this day?" Oh, okay, you said it on the air, so I'm obligated.
Right.
So the first couple of times we did it here in the studio, and it was getting too crowded. And so I got Otto on board, and he was more than glad to have it at his place. And so we do a remote there, and what'll happen is all the nonprofit people will come by, in 7 or 8 minute clips, talk about, here's where you send us some money, because money raising's 24/7.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, we got some coming up Friday, do we not? Yes, we do.
Indeed, we do.
The Roundup for Writers at the Wings of Hope. Are you familiar with this outfit?
I'm not. No,
Yeah.
I'd like to learn about it.
It's equitherapy, basically, for young people or older people that are in maybe disadvantaged in some way, mentally disadvantaged, et cetera. It's using horses to kind of help with transitions and to their therapy and whatever else. Maybe you got people that have got PTSD, you got people with anxiety issues, whatever else, and being around horses apparently is a very therapeutic thing.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, and so they've been on the show 3 or 4 times, and they're having their big roundup this Friday. It's over at the River Ranch. What am I saying? River Ranch in the stockyards. It starts at 6, and it's going to be a fundraiser, of course. So bring your wallet, dadgummit. Also, yesterday we had the mistress of ceremony, so to speak, Miss Melissa Miller from the Chamber of Commerce. There she is, and she's involved with them to some degree. So they get to be, she gets to be the homecoming queen, I guess, for the Wings of Hope or whatever you want to call her. I asked her if there's a tiara involved. She said, yes, I'm going to go ask one now. So that's a big deal. So jump out of that. Also, our friends at the Chamber, the day after the 17th, we have the Power Hour with the Power of Heels ladies. I asked if I could join, if I identified as such, but they didn't buy it. I said, hey, I mean, I could go play, volleyball on some college team, but I can't come to this. Anyway,
Right.
All right, anyway. September 18th, 8:30 to 9:30 over at Next Step Women's Center. And it's going to be just a conversation about, women in business. And it's being in business as a mom and a wife and et cetera, it's an extra full-time job, that's for sure. Also, as far as the food pantries, the school started, well, at least the in-service started yesterday. And boy, I sure don't miss that. I've been telling people how much I despised in-service, because you're sitting there and thinking, I got things to do, and you're getting whipped with all this stuff, and anyway, but that is what it is. But we still have a couple of weeks to go where the kids still need lunches, and they'll need food. What'll happen is, they tell me, is that people were, so far the pantries more or less kept up during the summer because the people stepped up on their giving, and then school starts, and it kind of other things take over on what they're thinking about, and so sometimes the giving kind of dips down a little bit, and then boom, it picks back up at the holiday season. So y'all keep it up. Y'all done a really good job. I mean, I talked to both Promises and to the people at Harvest House, and I'll be talking to Crowley House of Hope next Monday. Their new director took over about 2 months ago, and so we're going to reestablish a time for that. And then on Tuesday next week, are you a hunter by any chance?
I am.
Well, you'll enjoy this show. Sandy Mason's going to be on the show. He's with the American Legion, but he also works for the Texas Parks and Wildlife, does hunting education and youth-related programs for hunting and stuff like that. And he's really into that, and he's a very fine gentleman, too. Josh, do you think you could handle that?
Yeah.
All right. Did you handle today okay? You didn't break out in hives or anything?
No. I was just furiously fact-checking over here.
Okay, fine. You're in fact-checking, are you? And did you find any discrepancy in our discussion?
Nothing I'm going to say on air.
Okay, fine. All right.
Kidding.
I know. Anyway, well, thanks for all you done, Josh. And,
of course.
And we'll put a good word for you when they send you to the gulag. So you want to do this again?
What's that?
You want to do this again?
I would.
Yeah,
I would.
enjoy
I
it,
always
huh?
have a great time.
Yeah, I do too. I need to talk about stuff like this. Sometimes I do it by myself, and I bring in Josh, and he's like, "Leave me alone, man. I'm right in the middle of my Tetris game." And so there you go. Anyway, we'll see you next Monday, and y'all take care.